Welcome everyone, and thank you specifically to all the candidates who have chosen to join us tonight and the members of each of our partner organizations, as well as all of our public observers. We're thankful that you're sharing your time with us tonight. I'm Matt McIsaac. I'm a local sport medicine physician with BAM Sport Medicine. I've been a board member with CAMBA for just over a year now and am head of the advocacy committee. Avid mountain biker. I've got two young kids who are also becoming avid mountain bikers and my wife as well. So obviously a little bit committed to the cause. I would like to start with a land acknowledgement. The town of Canmore is located on the traditional treaty lands of Treaty 7 territory, comprised of the Stoney and Nakota nations of Wesley, Chiniki, and Bearspaw, three nations of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Piikani, Kainai, and Siksika, and the Tsuut'ina of the Dene people. An acknowledgement of Treaty 7 region is a commitment to thinking about the past and what our relationship to Indigenous peoples means to us today for the hope of a better tomorrow. I'll briefly share a bit about the host partners this evening. With 883 members, the Canmore Area Mountain Bike Association, or CAMBA, is a registered not-for-profit society whose overarching mandate is to advocate and strive for a vibrant and exciting trail system for all ages and abilities. CAMBA recognizes the importance of great trails for locals and the positive impact mountain bike and trail tourism has as an important part of the visitor economy. Community Cruisers is a registered not-for-profit society that promotes bicycle use for transportation as a means to improve health, sustainability, and equity in the Bow Valley. They operate a community bicycle workshop in Canmore, one opening soon in Banff, that sells affordable used bicycles and gives members access to tools and equipment to work on their bikes and learn from volunteer mentors. And the Canmore Trail Culture is the Bow Valley's largest grassroots running group that helps enthusiasts find the best trails to run on and inspires new adventurers and helps trail runners to meet new friends. The goal of tonight's forum is to host a focused discussion on trail-based outdoor recreation and active transportation, allowing municipal candidates in Canmore the chance to respond to specific topical questions in an open and public forum. Our format is the following. All candidates are in attendance tonight, save for mayoral candidate Jeff Laidlaw, who declined to attend. The format will be very tight, and all candidates will be held to a strict time limit and muted at the end of the time mark. We'll be giving a warning of about 10 seconds with a wave and the sound of a bicycle bell. Due to the number of candidates, we will not have introductory statements, and rather, in the essence of timeliness, we'll share their name before responding to the first question so that we can get to the questions as soon as possible. And in that same vein, all questions from the host organization's memberships were sent in advance, and we will not be inviting questions from the public, and as a result, no Q&A or chat function is enabled. Though designated candidates will be asked to respond verbally to specific questions, those not responding are invited to provide a written response using the chat tool, which is open to the candidates. The public will then be able to view these responses. And we're going to begin with a very quick introductory exercise and then move to 2 rounds of questions. Following that, each candidate will be asked to give closing remarks. We recommend that you view tonight's forum on gallery view so that they can see all the candidates on screen at the same time. And we will be filming this and posting it after. So let's begin. First is a rapid fire introductory session. And candidates, if you could either just raise your hand for a yes and then put them down and then raise your hand for a no. And we'll start with a simple question of, do you ride a bike for transportation? So those who yes, raise your hand. And perfect. And those who no, raise your hand. Thank you. Next, do you currently or have you ever ridden a mountain bike? Those who yes, and those who no. Thank you. Do you currently or have you ever trail run? Those who are yes, and those who are no. And thank you. Have you ever attended a trail building day within the last year? Those who are yes. Thank you. And those who are no. Thank you. And are you a member of any of the 3 organizations who are hosting tonight's event? Those who are yes. And those, oh, wishy-washy, okay. That's a part raise, okay. And those were no. All right, thank you all. So now we'll begin the basic 1-minute questions. So 1-minute response time, 2 questions for each of our 13 panelists. If you do have your own timer, it'd be great for you to set it just to keep a visual eye so you know as well, but I will be giving that little bell warning. So the first question goes to the following, and as I say your names, that's the order that we'll be responding. So the first name, apparently you're a little bit on the hot seat, but the question will go to the following 2 as well, so you have a moment to consider it. So this first question is for Hans Helder, Vijay Domingo, and Christoph Breyer. In general, are you in favor of road space reallocations that separate bicycles from cars, transit, and pedestrians, and why or why not?
Okay, yes, I am. I've personally experienced the complete streets experience in Spring Creek. It works very effectively. I've seen it work in other cities like Copenhagen and Amsterdam. It's a very effective way of managing different modes of transportation.
Thank you, Hans. Up next, Vijay.
I too am in favor of that. I think part of the way of getting people to use different modes of transportation is to create a culture, and culture is also visual. And so by having these separated lines, and you'll see in Ottawa, I think is a great example as well. You can see Calgary doing it downtown, is sort of defining those things. So whether you're using them or not using them, it's a clear visual to the community that this is part of the transportation mode in the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Vijay. And Christoph.
Yes, I am too in favor of this. We've seen it all over the world. As many of you know, I'm from Europe. It's very popular to ride a bike in Europe. There's towns, there are no cars allowed, bike riding only. So yes, I am too in favor of this type of transportation.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, moving on. Next question for Karen Mara, Jeff Hillstad, and Joanna McCallum. How would you work to influence a balance of the needs of users and wildlife when it comes to trail use in Canmore? Karen?
Thank you. I would balance them by continually, education is the first thing I would make sure of, because we don't want anyone riding their bikes in wildlife corridors. I would also encourage trails that could go along an exterior. I don't know a whole lot about the backyard, not backyard, but backcountry bike riding, but I would definitely encourage and investigate and talk to anyone that is in these groups and see what is best for them.
Thank you. And Jeff?
Thank you. I think it's very important that we, as Karen said, that we educate our public when it comes to getting along with the wildlife. And so with that, I know I have friends that they've told me they've ridden their bikes with their dog off leash, and we got to stop doing that kind of stuff because it just doesn't help. So I think one of them is just respect. We need to respect the wildlife. So we need to, if we we're making choices that are going to affect the wildlife while using the trails, I think we need to try to be better and respect the wildlife a little bit more. Just and also just being polite on the trails. My wife was biking the other night, and she's going through, and all of a sudden she slams into a herd of elk, and there's a couple of people coming the other way, and instead of giving a little bit of heads up or anything, they just hi, and that was about it. So just again, helping communicate with each other would be great. So thanks.
Great, thanks, Jeff. And Joanna?
Can you repeat the question, please? I apologize. There was a detail that I missed when you asked the question.
How would you work to influence the balance of needs of users and wildlife when it comes to trail use in Canmore?
Okay, thank you. And thanks for the question. I guess it depends on where the trail use is occurring. If we're talking about trails and wildlife corridors, then the wildlife take precedence. And if we're talking about developed trails elsewhere, then we need to look at the balance there. Ensuring that riders are wild smart, they're educated, like other people have brought up, are important. Ensuring that people are carrying bear spray. And I think we've gotten to a point now where we kind of need to be carrying bear spray all the time, as opposed to just when we're in behind or in the forest. But ensuring that we are speaking, that we're loud, all of that typical trail etiquette. But I guess the balance really depends on the locale. If we want to ensure that we have better wildlife coexistence, then part of that means that at times we as the humans need to peace out and give space.
Okay, thank you. Next question is for Jean San Miguel, Jeff Ma, Tanya Foubert, and Wade Graham. And the question is, would you support subsidizing e-bike ownership for low-income residents? If so, how would this be funded? Jean, you want to hit unmute?
Oh, thank you for asking that question. Personally, I haven't experienced an e-bike. I don't know the function of it. I just know that it goes up to 30 kilometers per hour. I think that's a great idea to help support the biking community. But again, I don't have enough information about e-bike or how would that be too beneficial for the community. But if it means that it would improve the quality of life of our community, then I think we should support it. And in terms of funding, I don't have enough information for this, so I can't give an answer right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, I would support this. Canmore is a pretty hilly place, and I think one of the challenges that people run into when it comes to going by bike, if you live higher up on the sides of the valley, is a little bit more work. And so an e-bike can help with that for sure. With regards to the low income side of things, absolutely, e-bikes are really expensive. So we find some sort of program to help get people into them. I'm not too sure if the best way to do the program is where it subsidizes and someone owns the bike. Perhaps there's some rental or leasing system so that people can access the bike, and when they're done with it, the Canmore, they could take those bikes back, we could fix them up, we could repurpose them, we could sell them back into the community. In terms of funding that sort of stuff, I think we got some options. There's a lot of talk about paid parking, perhaps some of the paid parking initiatives, which are being used to say fund roam transit. Some of that we can siphon off towards this subsidy program. Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff. And Tanya?
Thanks for the question, and thanks to the organizers for hosting this forum. My name is Tanya Foubert. I am absolutely in favor in subsidizing e-bikes for lower income residents of Canmore. Even though e-bikes have come down in price, they're still cost prohibitive if you consider the cost of living here, especially if you're a lower wage income earner. We already have an affordability program in our community, and we have subsidized a number of different products that increase energy efficiency and conservation in our community, from low flow toilets to shower heads to LED lights. And e-bikes would just be another way for us to reduce our greenhouse gases and increase livability and affordability in our community. In terms of paying for it, I like paid parking. I think photo radar is another source, and we usually have funds each year in the operating budget for climate change programs. So that's another possible source for that. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And Wade?
Yeah, I too am in favor of e-bikes and having e-bikes around town and subsidizing that. I think we could look at some sort of a co-op model. I think that would be interesting. As far as funding is concerned, I believe there might be money from the federal government from the carbon tax. Paid parking is another way to do it. I would want to see this as equitable as possible, and we do have affordability issues. The more people on bikes and the less people in cars, the better for all of us. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to the next question For the following candidates, Rob Seeley, Vi Sanford, and Sean Krausert. If elected, how would you help support the creation of additional mountain bike trails to our limited network in the area surrounding Canmore? First up, Rob.
Rob Seeley, thanks for hosting tonight. I like the idea of developing more trails, and Canmore has been a leader in this area in the last little while. Purpose-built trails and getting safely throughout the community they're both critical. We have a pretty elite athlete here who like getting out into the trails, so wildlife coexistence is important. Purpose-built trails in some areas help that, and just getting safely throughout town is important too. So I would continue to support what's happening and look at creative ways to do more.
Thank you. Vi?
Thanks for that question. I think it would be worth looking at opportunities and referring to our open spaces and trails plan that we had done in 2015 to see where we might be able to work such ideas into what we're already doing. You know, we're filling up our valley bottom pretty quickly here with development and transportation, and putting more trails into spaces where they are appropriate is going to be very critical. We have to look at the appropriateness of where we put them. Plus, we have to develop partnerships to create these opportunities. So I know that CAMBA has partnered with the town of Canmore, and they've worked with areas that are appropriate for these purposes. And that's probably the best way.
Thank you. Sean?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sean Krausert, and I'm running for mayor. You know, the biggest obstacle to getting people on bikes is lack of infrastructure, where people can feel safe going out onto, into town and using it as a realistic mode of transportation. And similarly, the biggest incentive to either creating your own trail or perhaps biking in places that you shouldn't is lack of acceptable alternatives. So I think that this is a critical part of our path forward. As a major outdoor recreation center, we need to continue to build the infrastructure and provide those alternative trails and link them up. That is, we can be world class in that regard, and we've got such great talent here through CAMBA and the community cruisers that have done an incredible job of getting people on bikes and connected.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question will be for the following three candidates, Joanna McCallum, Karen Mera, and Jeff Hillstad. What are your priorities with regards to active transportation, such as walking or cycling, in Canmore? Sorry, first Joanna.
Great, thanks for the question. So we completely understand that when we create facilities for cyclists and pedestrians, that they're more likely to use those facilities. So I am continuing to be supportive of projects that connect our bicycle infrastructure, because we have a lot of disconnectedness throughout our town. And that's because it's done one project at a time. But we're beginning to see that overall vision of what bicycle infrastructure can look like in Canmore and pedestrian infrastructure, which is really exciting. I don't know if anyone knows this, I've sat for several years as on the Bow Valley Regional Transit Commission, which is Rome. And one of the items that are on the strategic plan within the next 4 years is to investigate a car share / bike share. And I'm really excited about that. I think that a car co-op, not necessarily a car share like you see in larger cities, is something that could really get some teeth here in the Valley. And I'm excited to support that.
Beautiful, thank you. Next, Karen.
Thank you. Pretty much what most of what Joanna has said is that we need to make sure that we can build all this infrastructure, but if it's not connected, it's not going to be used. So my biggest thing right now would be to promote the connection from the main arteries, to promote people coming into town, how they get out, And then also I would look at investigating where people are recreating, because we know that there are people who bike that are more advanced than others, and we need to keep them, they have their own spot also. So we need to develop areas for them for recreational biking. But as far as transportation, roam and interconnecting all of our bike trails and walking paths, I'm more of a big walker than a biker, but have recently experienced e-bike and will investigate looking into that for transportation also. So yeah, interconnection is a big thing for me.
Great, thank you. And Jeff?
Thank you. I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but yeah, we need to continue to do what we're doing when it comes to our modal shift that we're doing right now in the town. We need to connect those trails, as you know, they are still disconnected in certain areas. We're getting better at it, but we still need to get everything properly connected so that people want to use them. I know for myself with my family, I feel a lot safer now on the multi-use pathways because there is that dedicated bike lane. So just with small children, it's a lot easier and safer. So I just think we need to keep going forward as a town, and you know, there's going to be bumps in the road. The intersection this year was an example of that, but basically we just have to keep at it and just make the connectivity better so that more people enjoy it and it gets more use.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm sure nobody has any idea what intersection. Next question is for Christoph Breyer, Hans Helder, and Vijay Domingo. Can you explain what level of priority the funding of safe and sustainable trail network would be for you if you are elected? So first, Christoph.
Great question. So sustainability of funding for those trails is vital. I know these are all non-for-profit organizations. So the question is, where do we get funding? And probably photo radar would be a good starting point to receive some of those funds to be used for trails and biking trails and hiking trails, to make sure we can keep them and maintenance, have the maintenance done for years to come.
Great, thank you. Next, Hans.
So thanks for the question. I think it's a challenging question. It's always challenging to figure out which funding takes priority, and to some extent, often recreational kind of funding like this is seen as optional. I think the challenge will be to move it higher up into the priority list, and I would support doing that. It makes sense to put funding forward to meet the needs of the entire community, not just those that are driving vehicles. So it makes sense to give it a little higher priority. And I think that would take some useful discussion at council to get to that point.
Great, thank you. And Vijay.
Thank you for the question. You know, the town provides funding for many things. They did it for even the winter tires here this last winter. I think the key thing is it's not just giving money, it's how much is actually going to make the difference. And I'd like to partner with CAMBA and other organizations to get an idea of what do you need to create and connect. But if we're going to be in multimodal transportation, I think this is a priority then that we have to look at. But I'm always a believer of finding out how much do we need to make a good impact, rather than just simply giving a few dollars and hoping that we paid attention to that subject. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Next question is for Sean Krauser, Rob Seeley, Vi Sanford. Would you support subsidizing e-bike ownership for low-income residents? And if so, how would this be funded?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I actually provided a comment not knowing it would come back around, but you know, I love my e-bike, and it's actually, you know, it's gotten me back on my bike. I'm getting to the age, and you know, I'm not in as good a shape as most of your membership, but it allows me to get back on my bike, and it's so much fun. So, you know, and then thinking in terms of living wage, whatever we can do to increase people's ability to live in this town, you know, without incurring a lot of expense with maybe multiple cars or or whatnot, we should look into. So as far as subsidizing, I'd certainly look into it. There's been some excellent suggestions made, whether it be photo radar or from paid parking. But I'm completely open to exploring all of those possibilities.
Thank you. And Rob?
Yes, I would support subsidizing this. It's very important from a livability standpoint, and how I would do it. Maybe take a look at Canmore Community Support Services. See if they can help out. They do help out with other initiatives, and this is a good one. So I will support it. And thanks for the question.
Thank you. Vi?
We have a program already in place in the community called Cycling Without Age. And it's a program where you can get this particular service to have somebody cycle you around the community. The infrastructure all stays with the town of Canmore. And I think if we were to do an e-bike program that would be available to low-income residents, I would prefer to see an in-house program where there would be a lending opportunity or a pooled opportunity or shared opportunity, because I think to meet the most need in the community, we would have to share these resources. So I would be more inclined to have a pooled opportunity, or even have a private company come into the community and offer that service on a rental basis.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question and final of the 1-minute questions. This one's for Wade Graham, Jin San Miguel, Jeff Ma, and Tanya Foubert. Please provide your thoughts on how to address the juxtaposition of increasingly tight municipal budgets and the explosive demand for recreational trails. So Wade?
Yeah, we're seeing every department squeezed for every dollar that they've got these days, aren't we? And demands for recreational and all sorts of other projects increasing. We need to be realistic about our tax base and how we tax folks and where we spend that money. We have to be prudent with it, but we also have to recognize that we do have needs, and we do have a community that needs support and sponsorship across the board, and slashing budgets isn't always the way to do that.
Thank you. Jin?
Would you mind repeating the question again?
Please provide your thoughts on how to address the juxtaposition of increasingly tight municipal budgets and the explosive demand for recreational trails.
Thanks for that.
You've muted again, Jin.
Thanks for that question again. I think there's the pandemic brought us to find ways to recreate ourselves, and it's really important that we take care of ourselves. Healthy community, happy community. However, now that we're realizing that there's tight on budget here, we need to improve our tax base, just like what Wade said. There's one thing that's we're looking into having is squeezing in a tourism funds, because the demand of the tourism infrastructure we're providing is increasing, and we're not getting budget for it. And yeah, thank you so much for your question.
Thank you. Next will be Jeff.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing in terms of this juxtaposition, because part of one of the biggest drivers, I think, of this economy in Canmore is our trail network, and people come to our place to use our trails. You look at the back of a lot of these trucks and these cars coming into town from the Calgary, whatever, there's like $30,000 worth of bikes on the back there. And so those are people that have income they could put into our community. So with that, I think we can actually work ways to like build up our trail network, but also find ways to like charge for access for some of those things, whether it's through like the sense of charging for parking to come in to access our network. I think they're good things. So when it comes to this idea of, hey, can we put money into trails? I do think when we put money into trails, it does come back to our community in a lot of ways, where people are stopping by the shops, they're getting a coffee, they're supporting the bike shops, there's doing local businesses, all those pieces. People come here to ride the trails, or to bike the trails, or hike the trails, and there's a driver. So I think we should put some money into that.
Thank you. And Tanya.
Awesome. Thanks for the question. So I'm not sure what's more challenging when it comes to the demand for additional recreational trails in our valley, the different stakeholders involved at the table in these discussions, or finding money to get these projects underway. But certainly I know it's not just the town of Canmore at the table. And so budgets for these projects will not just fall at our feet solely. We need to leverage our position as just one of the people at the table trying to plan for this future demand. And we need to work with, in particular, Alberta Parks and the tourism department, because there is tourism infrastructure funding. And these trails are tourism infrastructure. They're also quality of life. They're part of the thing that makes this a special place. And we have to create trails responsibly so we can be proud of them. So in terms of the juxtaposition of tight budgets, I think we got room to be a player, but we need the partners at the table as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you all. So we're moving on to the next section, which is the more complex questions, also known as you have a 2-minute response time if you choose. You can also keep it short if you like. So we'll get right into it. First question is going to go to Vijay, Christoph, and Hans. And a bit of a longer question. So could you tell us how you would support or expand upon the town's complete streets policy? And just to define that, complete streets are streets that are designed to be safe for all users, such as people who walk, bicycle, take transit, or drive, and people of varying ages and levels of ability. They also consider other uses like sidewalk cafes, street furniture, street trees, utilities, and stormwater management. So, Vijay.
That is a very big undertaking by the town. And as much as we look at it as just simply infrastructure building, it actually starts with culture. And I think some of the challenges that the community is voiced actually, and even with kind of that intersection is there's sometimes a disconnect at moments with the culture of transportation and complete streets. And I think that's probably where a lot of the effort needs to be focused on, is to make sure that we either educate or give some time to allow that to actually sink in, so that when we do additional extensions, it actually will be seamless. Part of that too is to making sure there's consistency, so that every intersection, for example, in a complete street is consistent rules from intersection to intersection. And I think that's, again, whether we turn right on at an intersection, allowed to or not allowed to, one would like to see probably that to be a consistent process. So part of that is not so much just the funding of it. I think it's about taking a deeper look at that. And these bigger projects need monitoring, and they need the ability that we take a look, get community feedback, and sometimes they need tweaks. You know, in business, we do that. We take a big project, and sometimes it goes great, and sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, we listen to the feedback, make adjustmts, we learn from those things, and we improve on that, so that in the long term, we end up with a full, well-rounded, integrated, well understood transportation system that not only the locals understand, obviously, but the tourists that come here get a real feel for our community and enjoy participating in our complete streets. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Next would be Christoph.
Thank you. Well, this is a big question. First of all, I would say we need to listen to all the community stakeholders, get all parties on one table, get educated, and then we can make an informed decision how to make this happen and make this full transportation system work, because every street has different challenges of sidewalks, no sidewalks, there are pedestrians. As many of you know, I would like to see Main Street closed for pedestrians only, maybe biking available. So we need to look at this as a bigger picture to find a solution for every street.
Great, thank you, Christoph. And next, Hans.
So I think one of the biggest challenges is to not only educate people, but also bring people together. A complete street, if you think about it just from the context of cyclists and pedestrians and not vehicle operators, you're only solving part of the issue. And so if you create from the outset, a conflict between the two or three, then I think you're starting from a negative position. So you really need to have that broader based consultation before you go to a very comprehensive plan for complete streets. I think they work well. I think they have the potential to work well in major areas of the community. But I also see from the example of the intersection as we're calling it these days, that there are some challenges that are associated with that. So there's a pretty clear perception that I think people generally like it, but we also have to look at the sort of total cost of ownership. If complete streets aren't maintained appropriately in the wintertime, they won't get used appropriately in the wintertime. So we have to think about not only building them, but also maintaining them and operating them.
Great, thank you. The next question is for Jeff Hillstad, Joanna McCallum, and Karen Mara. And the question is, the Tourism Industry Association of Alberta, or TIAA, recently released the findings from their first of a kind study on Alberta's Crown land outdoor recreation economy. The study found that Albertans spend $2.3 billion on Crown land outdoor recreation trips annually, and another $376 million on recreational equipment and related accessories for these trips. Mountain biking was amongst the top 5 of the influencing activities, no matter winter or summer, motorized or non-motorized. With the significance of the economic impact of mountain biking and what it has on the local economy, how would you invest in this opportunity for the town of Canmore? Jeff?
Thank you. First, we'd have to look at, can we, get tax or dollars from the province for strictly this type of outdoor activity, because as has been stated, budgets are tight at the town. So I think it's a great thing. We have a strong mountain biking community in Canmore. It continues to grow, and it will continue to grow. So it all comes down to, providing those trails, which again, it takes time, takes money. It's going to take partnership between the town and other organizations. So really creating better trails system is definitely going to help that. But this actually could be another thing that we can take to the province as a bargaining chip, or at least to try and help push us a little more forward when it comes to things like the when it comes to the I'm totally blanking here, so sorry about that. But anyways, we need to bring this to the province. We need to try to get this work done. We need to continue to invest in our trail systems, because this is, as you've just stated from their study, is a big part of the economy. I know it's a big part of the community of Canmore. So if it can help us, I finally got it back. If it can help us gain resort municipality status and help get more funding for things like this and other infrastructure throughout the town, would be great. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Joanna?
Thanks for the question. So I think the key point in your question is discovering or finding the land for these activities to occur on appropriately. As it's been pointed out, we have a lot of people walking around our trails. They're super popular. I think we have over 70 kilometers of them that the town of Canmore maintains. It might be more now. And how people interface on those trails is really crucial. And so identifying land in particular that might be specific to mountain biking itself as opposed to multi-use is probably a key way to get the kind of buy-in from the mountain bike community that we would need to be able to get the economies of scale that we would need to make it financially successful. The land part is key. We have land, a lot of it is in quite precious wild spaces. And so that whole wildlife trail user interface has got to be important through education. Those are impressive numbers. I'm not sure how people actually dig those out, but I think that that and competing priorities within our budget is going to make it tricky, but it doesn't make it impossible. So that's my answer.
Great, thank you. And Karen.
Thank you for your question. I think this report gives us, I don't know if you call it ammunition or backing, to go to the province and speak to our MLA and say, these are your facts. This is the report that we are getting, and ask for a partnership in finances to for the infrastructure to connect and possibly connect our trails to any existing crown land that we could find that isn't precious and has value to our wildlife and could interfere with our corridors. But how we could connect those and present it to the province and just say, hey, where's our resort municipality? Where's some money for the funding to create these trails that can be connected? So that's where I would go with it.
Great, thank you. Next question is for Tanya Foubert, Wade Graham, Jin San Miguel, and Jeff Ma. And the question is, Canmore has an integrated transportation plan, or ITP. The plan acknowledges that as we grow, to make room for those that need to drive, we will need to make more walking, cycling, and transit desirable alternatives. What will you do to facilitate and encourage alternative modes of transportation, such as transit, walking, and cycling as per the ITP? Tanya.
Could you just give me this last part? What would you do?
Yeah, what would you do to facilitate and encourage alternative modes of transportation, such as transit, walking, and cycling as per the ITP?
Okay, perfect. So facilitate and encourage alternative modes of transportation. That includes continuing to support our fare-free local transit. I think that we're at the point where that service has been so successful, we could really consider what's the next step for it within Canmore. I know that there are talks in the works about a stop or extending into Quarry Lake Park, the Nordic Center, again, that sort of area. But in terms of transit, that we already have a successful model. We just need to keep investing in it. When it comes to walking and cycling, I think we've started with the integrated transportation plan in terms of the complete street transition in the community, and we need to continue doing that. And I think the next phase, we need to really realize and visualize how this translates into residential neighborhoods. I know that there was work this year being done on the roads in TP Town, and that's a particular neighborhood that needs a lot of work in terms of roadways. I believe it was said earlier this year, the potholes have potholes in TP Town. And I think that there, bike parking is another way in the downtown core, and especially to places where we want people to start to be using bikes as their main source of transportation. They need a place to put them. I know that we've done studies on vehicle parking in the downtown, and the last one we looked at bike parking, and we didn't have enough. That's an additional capital investment. I don't think it needs to be a big one because it's bike stands, but it has to be something that we're thinking about as we make plans for these different parts of our community each year. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Next, Wade.
Thanks for the question, Matt. I think, as Mr. Krauser has said a few times, growth pays for growth. And when we're building new neighborhoods and new developments such as Three Sisters Mountain Village, we need to seriously look at how we are integrating all transportation. I'd like to see more bike racks on their own buses. I think having bike racks on their own buses is fantastic, and often they're full. But increasing bikeability and walkability in our downtown core, getting people out of cars, intercept parking, paid parking, a potential parkade somewhere. This town is our parkades are full. What parking lot hasn't been full this last little while? And I think we need to seriously address that, get people out of their cars, get them walking, get them biking when they get here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next is Jin.
Oh, thank you so much for that question. I think we have 91 audience today. We got to heighten up the energy. I know we have a very active listeners here, and apologize, like we candidates are getting close to the election and our energy is starting to deplete, but we're trying our best. So let's try to heighten up the energy. And thank you for that question about the integrated transportation plan. A lot of people comment to me on that they don't understand it very well. But I think one thing that we need to work on is having a plan. Like Tanya Fober did a good point about the downtown core. The last plan for the downtown core was back in 1998. And on page 5 of that, on the downtown core plan, it's valid for 5 to 15 years. So if you do the math, it's 8 years that we don't have a plan for downtown. I live in TP Town. I've seen a lot of people crossing the highway, and I think that's very unsafe. We have to account on them. I guess another aspect that I wanted to bring is this year, there's a huge surge of the multicultural community getting into the biking, and I've been in some of their activities. And it's amazing that they're actually now being more active and involving in activities, because they used to just work a lot. And now they're using the trails, they're more aware of things. And there's a lot of ideas, but having a good plan, just like starting a family, is crucial. We can come up with ideas with having bicycle storage. So if you have an expensive bicycle, you can store it there and you feel safe taking your expensive bike out. There's a lot of plan out there, but we just have to execute the plan. Let's have a plan. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jeff?
Yeah, so if we're going to boost users of like trail users, more bike movement, more walking, all that sort of stuff, there's a big part of that's cultural. So a cultural shift. So if we can start to access and make this sort of thing where when people say, come to Canmore, or they live in Canmore, they understand that bikes are a viable thing, or walking is a viable thing. So if, say, on the tourism side, if people came, that's one of the challenges. People come here, they drive here in a car, and they kind of feel they have to drive around, get around, which just increases our congestion. It'd be kind of neat to see some interesting programs where people that are visiting, whether a day use visitor, they can access rental fleet. Maybe we do what I've seen in some countries in Europe. We have a whole bunch of like free bikes, and people just ride them around and they drop them off at certain spots. In terms of barriers for our community, we've talked about this a bit. The cost of bikes can be challenging. The Community Cruisers does a great job with affordable bikes. I think for folks that are using the e-bike idea, especially if they're living higher up on the hills, further distance to travel, that subsidizing program we talked about, I think that's really good. In terms of also continuing the momentum with this stuff, we do have winter. And with winter, we need to make sure if we're going to have people walking and biking, we got to be up on our snow removal so that the people have confidence in using those trails all the time. It's not always that they think it's cold, it's just hard to get out there. Another big piece, I think, with the cultural thing is the education side. So we can educate the drivers that, hey, there are these other opportunities to get around, and you know what, it might even be faster and not only better for the environment. That would be great. And from an education side, that's also safety, talking to kids. I think we get some programs going into the schools so that younger kids, right off the get-go, they start to believe in this stuff, because every kid loves the bike, and we can give them the tools to keep biking and get that awareness to drivers and just keep driving that stuff forward. I think that'd be helpful. And then a couple other things, infrastructure, more bike racks, safe bikes, safe bike lockups situations. And there, thanks.
Perfectly timed. Okay, next question, going to Vi Sanford, Sean Krauser, and Rob Seeley. Canmore is surrounded by provincial parks and crown land, and despite decades of work by volunteers to improve this, the recreational trail network is still fragmented and is known for being poorly maintained. In 2001, Town of Canmore Citizen Perspective Survey, 100% of those surveys stated that parks, trails, and other green spaces are important to them, and 90% declared that these amenities are very important. What would you do to improve the intergovernmental relations and tackle issues like this, which impact the quality of Canmore's recreational trail experience? Would this be at the political level, administrative level, or both? Vi?
Well, that's a very big question, because you're talking about interjurisdictional land. And when we're talking about crown land, we have to talk about the relationship with managing that town land, that crown land. And the town administration would have to be part of the conversation. But, we're we have a lot of humans in the Bow Valley now, and we have to be considerate of our human impacts. And where are we going to protect our wildlife? And when and how are we going to make those distinctions as to where human use is appropriate? We do have an Indigenous community to the east of us that may be an opportunity for us to connect and partner for some of those opportunities. If we need a land base, maybe we're looking at other opportunities to manage that land base and develop it to the human use standard that we're looking for, because human use is a significant aspect of growing our municipality. So let us have the conversation of what we want to preserve and what we're willing to give up, and what the relationship of humans with our landscape is going to be, because that is going to be the significant question. And then we look at how we manage the interconnectedness of that land.
Great, thank you, Vi. And just to correct myself, it was the 2021 Town of Canmore Citizens Perspective Survey. Sean?
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to actually answer the question that was asked. And the question is about how do we really make some significant movement on connecting these trails so that their use and their draw out of sensitive areas will be better. There will be better take up. And since there is an interjurisdictional issue, how do we move forward with that partnership and actually get some traction? I think CAMBA has done some incredible work on trails, but you can't have just one organization working on it. I think that the TIA report that was reported in the Outlook today is great fodder for that conversation with the province. If the goal is to double tourism from the province's perspective, and we're going to be a big part of that, and this study shows that outdoor recreation is a huge need, we need to have that discussion both on the administrative and political levels in order to basically build a partnership and say, hey, we want to work with you, Alberta, to meet your goals. However, growing anything requires some investment, and you can see that it's going to pay off. So we need to work together to get more funding for appropriately placed trails, connecting those trails, and using things like this report and others to encourage that conversation. And then if we're helping meet their goals, they can help us meet our goals, and it can be a win-win for all involved.
Thank you. Rob?
Boy, that's a big question. The connectivity issue and working interjurisdictional, I think it's important. The TIAA report, there's a lot in that, and I think there's a lot of work to do. But I do believe in working together and with the community members to work these linkages out. I think they're important, and there's a way to do it. I don't have the answer right now, though, but yeah, I look forward to looking at that a little more and seeing what can be done.
Great, thank you. Next question is for Karen Mara, Jeff Hillstad, and Joanna McCallum. And I'm probably going to butcher this, so pardon me if you're finished, but Oulu, Finland, has gained an international reputation for its efforts to facilitate active transportation in the winter. Due to careful planning and ongoing improvements to the seasonal maintenance, now 27% of the population are active cyclists all year long. What steps will you take to facilitate increased active transportation during the winter months in all of Canmore, including areas like the Homesteads, Peaks of Grassy, Prospect Heights, all of which lack paved pathways to downtown? Karen?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, and I won't repeat the name of the town either. What I would promote is, as much what has much been said tonight, is maybe we need more bike racks on our own transit, so that the ones who are coming down from homesteads and different areas can come into the core or downtown close, where it's not so where it's interconnected is what I'm going to say, where we can also improve our maintenance of our trails. If we expect our people to walk and to bike, we need to, which has been stated also, to make sure they're cleared. And because people that are not sure, and we want to make them make the shift from their vehicle to transportation, like bikes and walking, is we have to make it accessible for them and safe. Because we have a lot of elderly people too that, and I shouldn't say elderly, but middle-aged and up, that don't want to fall down and break a hip or that sort of thing. So it would be keep the pathways clear, do a good job of that, and make sure we have more bikes on our public transit that is roam, and to be able to bring their strollers and bikes into town. So that's how I would approach it.
Great, thank you. Jeff Hillstand.
Thank you. So a lot of this comes down to budget. To clear the trails, to pave the trails, it's all budgetary questions. So there's a good chance that this isn't all going to happen overnight. It's going to be a bit of a process. It's going to take some time. So I think we just have to keep chipping away at it to make better connectivity, so that more people are encouraged to ride during the winter. It also helps if it doesn't snow a bunch, but we can't control that. But we can control the snow clearing. So again, that's a budgetary item, which gets looked at. So when we do that, we're just gonna have to keep chipping away at it, increase the paved paths where we can. We did enhanced trail clearing and stuff the last couple of years with the onset of COVID, to make so that we could get out there more. So we, if that's something that we want to do going forward, we're gonna have to give it the appropriate budget. So those types of things, really help, basically making it possible to be outside all year round is quite key. So again, we're gonna have to look at, do we budget for this on a, go forward basis? And just look at other things, can we get all these trails paved? Can we find other ways of making the gravel trails more accessible in the wintertime so that people can walk and bike? And, we need to look at what they did in Finland. If they've already done it, so we can look there and see what they've done and take our cues from them. So that's a good place to start, would be look at exactly how they managed to get it done.
Great, thank you. And Joanna?
Thanks for the question. So I remember waiting for the bus with my kids, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And my daughter had been talking about a documentary she'd been watching the night before, and it was about how they heat the sidewalks in certain Northern European countries. And so they automatically sort of shed their ice and snow in the wintertime. And I remember my kids saying to me, "Ma, we should do that here in Canmore." And I was just at that time thinking about transit. This was 5 or 6 years ago. And I said, well, why don't we get transit and you can take care of the heated sidewalks when you become mayor? So we'll see. She's 16. I think it actually starts with kids. So we have an incredibly active group of children in our community that bike to school. My kid is one of them, 365. That kid goes to school on her bike. And we equip that child with studded tires and helmet and all of the equipment needed for her to stay warm and to actually enjoy it and not freeze her backside off. At the same time, we have this great organization, Community Cruiser. So I want to say it was like 3 or 4 years ago, and I think Jen Tweddle will remember this, that I brought my kids in and they got their bikes all outfitted with the lights and everything else so that they felt safe and appropriate on the trails while they winter biked. So again, it's like some have pointed out culture or resources. But more importantly, in terms of talking about the maintenance of trails, council did decide during COVID to take part of our surplus and direct it to enhancing outside spaces, skating rinks, trail use. We borrowed the trail compactor. I don't think that's the right term, from the Nordic Center, so that we could work on the gravel trails and everything else. And we received quite a bit of positive feedback as a result of that, which is great. But that was a budget item. That was something that we decided to focus budget on because We knew that people needed to be outside during COVID, and we knew that there were throngs of people that needed to be, well, that wanted to be in our outside during COVID. We tend to budget by budget, focus on parts of town. So right now you'll notice Bow Valley Trail is having a lot of their trails rehabilitated or raised out of the ditch, etc. And again, as some have pointed out, it's a budget item. Perhaps the next budget item when we're looking at trails is to bring them out of the ditch or make them safer from peaks of grassy homesteads, etc. But kids is a great place to start.
Thank you. Okay, next question is going to Hans Helder, Vijay Domingo, and Christoph Breyer. The question is, every 2 years since CAMBA's inception, a member survey has been conducted. The last survey had 643 responses, a 49% increase from our prior survey in 2018. Respondents said that they want CAMBA to focus on new trail construction and trail restoration to improve the trails that are currently, quote, loved to death. How would you go about supporting this in the town's business plans and budget? Hans?
Well, you know, I think one of the interesting things about cyclists is that they tend to travel significant distances. Often you talk with them and they think nothing of traveling 50 kilometers on a cycling trip. I don't know how many times you would have to circle Canmore or the trails of Canmore to put on 50 kilometers. So I think one of the issues that needs to be addressed is a broader perspective. We've talked a little bit about interjurisdictional conversations. To some extent, those conversations have to start there, not just get pushed there. The Legacy Trail is a great example. The extension of the Legacy Trail into Canmore was a big challenge. It was multi-jurisdictional. It was multi-departmental in terms of the provincial government. And there's a lot of policy discussion that needs to take place in order to expand and extend trails in a way that people actually use them. So just asking to have more trails and expand the existing trails and so on, I think probably doesn't really meet the need. You really have to have a more comprehensive kind of discussion. In order to do that, you need to plan from the outset how to do that more effectively. I think it's well worth the investment to do that, but it takes time, it takes effort, and it takes commitment to follow these things through. So those are the kinds of approaches that I would take. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. Next, Vijay.
Thanks, Matt. I think there are two parts of that question. One I want to talk about is communication. And first of all, Matt, I'm super impressed of the response rate and the number of people that are engaged in this organization, because it's in communication that we actually understand the direction the community wants to go. So I first want to applaud CAMBA and the group for taking these initiatives and doing surveys and getting the information out there. The second part of, and we need to continue that correspondence. The second part of that was budget. And you know what, in our own lives and as we move through things is that we can't always have everything at the same time, but we can plan things and be clear about when we can do something. So these programs and the things we're talking about are long-term initiatives. And I think if we take that first focus in budgeting, then we actually have some clarity with organizations that we actually believe in what you're doing, and we're going to do it right the first time. Because if you sometimes under budget or do things, we end up cutting pieces that later on you have to repair, replace. And I think when it comes to these trails and these designs, the fact that you have the passion for it is, and community passion for it is great, but let's look at this. Let's break this down into a number of years so that in the long run, when we look back even 10 years from now, we can all say, wow, we did it. And that way people can be engaged in this group, which is engaging even the building and constructions with their own hands of some of these trails. So the resources and the integration here is phenomenal because you have passion. And that's what this community in many areas, I love it, because when you have a question, there's an expert here that really knows the answer to it, and they're involved in it. And so that's a bit of grassroots. I think this organization is an example of that, and I applaud Matt, you and the team here for getting such great feedback from the group. Thanks.
I appreciate that, Vijay. Thank you. Next up, Christoph.
Yeah, as many of the candidates said before, this is another budget item. And as many of you know, I'm a big advocate to receive or achieve and receive municipal resort status for Canmore, Banff, Jasper, and other towns. So if we would have municipal resort status, we would have the budget to have the funds to maintain trails, get the restoration done, and even maybe new trails as well. So it is a budget item. If we do receive municipal resort status, we probably would have the funds for all Canmore residents and many more visitors to come for all our trails.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question is for Rob Seeley, Vi Sanford, and Sean Krauser. And the question is that many seniors and those with mobility challenges find it difficult to walk and cycle comfortably in our community, particularly in the winter. With an aging population in Canmore and more desire to age in place, what actions would you take to make our community inclusive and equitable when it comes to active transportation? Rob?
Thanks for the question. Enhanced snow clearing has been talked about, and I think that's important to keep our seniors safe. You want to make sure that they're able to walk when it's icy out and the pathways are cleared. I'm also an advocate of an indoor field house. So along with that, people being active, especially seniors, should have access to a better walking track. And our growing season isn't that good. So an indoor field house would keep our youth active as well, giving them an opportunity. And multimodal transportation and all sorts of issues, fare-free transit. It all helps, but thanks for the question.
Thank you. Vi?
Thank you. We have some pretty amazing seniors in this community, of course. And I know a lot of seniors that ride their bikes year round. And so, yes, there is infrastructure that needs to be maintained for that purpose. I think the use of the fare-free transit is a significant aspect of it to get seniors to and from the downtown core. And I know that the municipal buildings, all around the municipal buildings, there's a very high there's a very good way of snow clearing around the entrances and accesses to municipal buildings. But we had a conversation a few years ago about snow clearing for handicap parking, because a lot of seniors have mobility issues. They have the option to park in the handicap parking spots, but we were having some issues with not snow clearing them adequately or using them as snow accumulation zones as opposed to snow clearing zones. That was something that was addressed and is considered to be a significant way to resource seniors in the community to access downtown more effectively. We do have to consider how seniors can get around actively. Walking is definitely something that we resourced from the senior center. We paved the pathway between the senior down the Spurline Trail to where the grocery stores are. And that really did have a significant impact on how many seniors were able to access the grocery services from the Bow Valley Senior Lodge. And, you have to look at these little incremental things that you can do to make it more available to the most number of people. So you have to be looking at the economies of scale of doing these activities and getting people from high density places to other places that provide them with services. So we need to connect. And that's the biggest thing, is we need to figure out where people are and connect them.
Good timing. Sean?
Yeah, I think being as active as we can be is important at all ages. My wife is not a senior yet, but it's a major thing that she has to deal with on a daily basis. And as we all get older, some of those opportunities diminish. So I think that this is has to be a major priority. And we talked about, you know, lots of the things have come up tonight. I mean, there is a biking program where you can, you know, have somebody bike you around, and that's pretty cool. But we've also talked about e-bikes, and that will also prolong one's ability to stay on a bike. Rob just mentioned a field house, and I've been in discussion with a group that is very interested in the field house. And the cool thing there is it can be multi-purpose. You can meet a lot of needs with one project, and a walking track, not only for seniors, but for recuperation from surgeries. And there's a lot of orthopedic surgeries in this valley due to our recreation. Another thing that I'd like to consider is you know, on-demand transit. With mobility issues, getting to the transit, the transit stop is often the barrier. And so with an on-demand transit, which I know has been talked about at some level already, you can actually, you know, book ahead, and you can actually be picked up and taken to your destination, which of course extends the reach and frequency of transportation, as opposed to sticking with the usual route. So I think there's a number of things that have been talked about tonight, including the clearing of trails, or allowing the sunshine to do that, because they're paved and they'll get cleared pretty quick as soon as the sun comes up. That often happens near my place. So yeah, lots of different things. It has to be high priority though.
Great, thank you. All right, the next and final question. We've been very good on time. Thanks, Guy. For Jeff Ma, Tanya Foubert, Wade Graham, and Jin San Miguel. Jin, you keeping that energy to wrap it up for us. The outdoor recreation is an important part of sustainable and diversified economy. It can be managed without extracting resources from the land. It is regenerative, affordable to build and maintain, and its infrastructure can be much more easily adapted to accommodate the needs of wildlife compared to roads and buildings. In our planning for the town's sustainable development and economic resilience, please explain how you would champion for mountain biking to be a part of this mix. Jeff Ma?
So I think when it comes to how we've done trails in the past, typically it's been a bit of the Wild West out here in the Bow Valley. In the past, Alberta parks, typically they're the ones that allow permission for trail development because of the time it takes for them to do that, which can be significant, multiple years. What we've had is situations where rogue trail builders will be like, I could wait 8 years to go for the process, or I could just cut a trail right now and I'll use it until you guys decommission it. So I think if we could get Alberta Parks to work with our town more to help expedite the process of helping permissions and doing trail building, I think that'd be great. In terms of infrastructure and space, that is a key piece. A lot of people talk about how it's not easy finding spots to build trail. So I think we need to be a little more creative there. I think within our developed footprint, there's a lot of spots where we can put trails in. For example, behind my house up here on Hospital Hill, there is already like impromptu trails that work in between the houses, and we could probably work on them, making them more impressive, make them more usable and enjoyable. So there's already developed footprint there. I think we can also be creative with looking at where else we can access trails. We talk about steep slopes for wildlife. Maybe if we go higher up, we can get access into some trails. Obviously, we have to check out, make sure we don't have any, habitat issues with, say, like goat or sheep. But I think there are other parts within the Bow Valley higher up, as opposed to being lower down on the corridors. Let's get above the corridors so you can get some stuff going on there. So then we're opening our resource potential for making more trails. And I think it also exploring this idea of, hey, like closing certain areas at certain times so the trails can regenerate. And if we can do this where we have enough volume where, hey guys, let's all agree not to be here for a while, we can work on those trails, let them come back, ride somewhere else, etc. So those are some of my ideas there.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Tanya?
Awesome. So thank you for the question. I think, we are missing some of the action when it comes to outdoor recreation revenues around tourism. And, I lived 1 year in Whistler, and just even being that close to the Sunshine Coast and Squamish and all of the recreational uses they have out there and the trail networks, we're not even close to tapping into the revenue potential that's out there. So how would I champion that as a member of town council if elected? Well, I would work with partners, because champions need partners, and we have great partners in terms of groups like CAMBA, Canmore Trail Culture, and the Canmore Community Cruisers. They know what they're talking about. They have the knowledge, the research, and the capacity to help council achieve these outcomes and develop this as part of our tourism-based industry and our resort economy. We need to recognize that this is economic development and economic diversification. We also need to reward good behaviors. You know, we need to make sure that we're communicating, educating, and we're sending the right messages. And we need enforcement. I know we have limited jurisdiction when it comes to enforcement on trails, but we certainly do have some. And that's not without also getting in there and removing pirate trails. So, you know, and making sure we're sending the message, this is where we want this activity to happen, this is where it's okay, and this is where it's not okay, and putting the resources behind making sure that we have signage to support that, because I've never once seen a sign in this town that tells me there's a wildlife corridor right beside me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Wade.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I recognize that this is the CAMBA and the biking forum, but there's also, this applies very much to the climbing world, the backcountry skiing world, the paddling world. You know, outdoor rec is Canmore, you know, and let's look at that as a complete picture, not just a singular silo. I think I'll go back to parking lots and how full they have been lately, and we're going to need infrastructure for those sorts of things. Working with developers to build integrated plans for our communities and outdoor rec, and I'll use that more broadly than just the biking community. We need to be stewards of this place, and we need to say that, you know, we can't be biking here, we can't be climbing here. There are appropriate places and inappropriate places, and I think the education around that needs to continue. And I think we do need to be careful about overuse and overcrowding as well. You know, we need to recognize that our valley has limits as far as the number of people that we can bring here, and the idea of doubling tourism over the next while concerns me a little, to be honest with you. We're pretty maxed out these days, and if we're going to double tourism, we have to do that with a very, very careful eye. Thank you for the question, Matt.
Thanks for the response. And to close it up, Jim.
All right, well, thanks for that question. I find the mountain biking community is a very exciting one. I just remember the first time meeting Jeff Ma, I was on top of Pigeon Mountain, and I saw him with his mountain bike there. I'm like, it's incredible how a mountain bike can go up high like that. And I tried mountain biking, and it's just like skiing. I fell in love with it. It's fun. And I met communities. Our Filipino community here has gotten into it. Really exciting community. And in fact, I think these days, based on what I've been hearing and researching, there's such a shortage of supply of mountain bikes. If you go to a shop, you probably have to wait at least a year to have your mountain bike delivered here in Canmore. The community just went up like that. And there's also a lot of discussion within the community of having more trails. And I agree with you know, getting support from the Alberta parks, but they wouldn't listen if we just tell them. We have to present them a proper study. We show them how many people are here. My current job is working for Banff Lake Louise Tourism, and the last surveys that we did is the what do you call that? That lane going to Johnson Canyon. If it's feasible to close that, to keep it, or what to do with that in the next couple years, and we base it on people's feedback, not just with the board members, but we listen to what the people are saying, and that's very important. We do that, and also part of it is educating our community of responsible trail making. And another part of trail making for the mountain bikes is the aspect of creating jobs here in Canmore, supporting local businesses, locals. My roommate actually works for CAMBA, and he does a time's up. Anyway, there you go. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you all. And due to the exceptional timeliness, you're all getting very good at this far into the campaign. If you would like, we can allow up to 2-minute response times for closing remarks. Now you're free to cut it short at 1 minute or 2 seconds for all you prefer. But we're going to run down, and the list has been randomly generated in front of me here. And so for closing comments, we will start with Christoph Breyer. Christoph.
Of course, randomly picked. Yes, of course. Well, thanks so much. Again, my name is Christoph Breyer, running here for Town Council. I would like to meet with you as a local homeowner, as a voter, as a taxpayer, most likely on the trail, not biking, but hiking, like how we did run into our Premier Jason Kenney this summer just by accident. And building trust is a process that involves explaining to people who have never heard of me what I would do and why. I have found during my career that sometimes it can be a challenge to get others to see something in a new way. But once they understand my point of view, they either love it, agree with it, or educate me. I believe that these things will make me a good counselor. I also have a strong work ethic, a positive attitude, and an outgoing personality. Running for town council is a fantastic and appealing part of the process of helping and working with the community. Thank you, from your neighbor next door.
Thanks, Christoph. Next, Hans Helder. Hans?
Okay, it helps when you press the right mute button. You know, when we were talking about e-bikes, I was thinking about my experience with e-bikes. My wife, Carla, has an e-bike. I told her I'm not quite ready to get one, but we like going recreationally cycling together. And I'll tell you, one of the greatest workouts is having her ride the e-bike and me trying to keep up with her. So there are some other advantages to e-bikes that probably weren't built into it at the outset. So I may start thinking about getting one, but they're a great training tool. One of the things I was thinking about as we were talking is that we've been talking a lot about purpose-built infrastructure, but there's a lot of other infrastructure that can be integrated with cycling trails, running trails. Normally, you have to go through some parts of the community in order to get to it. So there's nothing wrong with using sidewalks. There's nothing wrong with using roadways to connect between points. And there used to be a lot of emphasis on sharing the road. So part of this during a transition period, as we're moving towards more and more dedicated infrastructure, is really upping the ante in educating people on how to share that infrastructure effectively. We talked about clearing walking trails. Well, it would be really helpful if a lot of people cleared their sidewalks and we could walk on it appropriately in the wintertime as well. My wife and I walk 5 to 6 kilometers pretty much every day and walk along the trails, walk along the sidewalks, and sometimes the sidewalks are much more treacherous than the trails are. So there's a lot of other aspects to this that we need to think about this in a fairly integrated way. And I would just like to sort of close my comments with going back to the point of, let's think about this in a much broader context. Let's think about the interjurisdictional aspects to it, the different levels of government, but also our neighbors to the west, our neighbors to the east, figuring out how we can work collaboratively with them to build better infrastructure. I think that would be a great way to start. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Hans. And I just want to clarify, I made a mistake in introducing these closing remarks that kind of we're hoping to keep a focus on the progress of trail-based outdoor recreation and active transportation if elected. So moving on, next up on the random generated list is Jeff Ma.
Okay, well, trail side guys, whether it's CAMBA, CTA, or community cruisers, your guys' work is awesome. And I think a lot of folks that moved to Canmore were for the reason of the trails here. Yeah, I know that's one of the reasons why I came here, just for the trail network. So I recognize how key and critical trails are. We have a contentious area. It's challenging with wildlife corridors. I do feel there are ways that we can still move the needle forward for creating trails, improving our trail network, exploring ways in such a way that we can have a way where we're respecting how we're interacting with wildlife, protecting the corridors, yet still get creative, create that network. In terms of tourism side of things, you know, province of Alberta says, hey, tourism is going to be the biggest driver for our province. And here we are, Canmore, with our trail network, and it's going to be a big piece of that. So I think we do need to push for that so we can get the funding to develop it and actually, you know, capitalize that for our community. And finally, with the transportation side, we already declared climate emergency. And I think there is at times resistance towards, say, walking and biking, e-biking. But, you know, there's adoption starting to happen. And it's kind of like, you know, back in the day when you had your cell phone, only 1 or 2 people had a cell phone. Later, everyone had a cell phone. I think we can get to that same point here where, you know, we keep pushing these initiatives, keep educating, maybe subsidy programs. People just see the challenge of driving in time. And before they know it, hey, they realize that there's other ways to get around. If we can like keep supporting that initiative, I think we'd be pretty surprised, pretty impressed with how far we can get in a short period of time. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. Next up is Jin San Miguel.
I just love how Rob Seeley comes up when we mention cell phone there. All right. Thank you so much to your organizations, CAMBA, Community Cruisers, and Canmore Trail Cultures for organizing this event and raising more awareness on our health. As we know, health is wealth. And especially in this time of pandemic, it's good to have more recreational activities. And I just wanted to report, because if we're going to look at the 2021 Citizen Perspective Survey, the number 3 municipal issue there is transportation. It went up by 13% compared to the study back in 2017. So it's a very hot topic to discuss. It's number 3 in our municipal issue based on this study. And there's a lot of opportunities here. And one thing that I wanted to bring into the council is the strategy of finding opportunities, determining our strengths, and also identifying our threats and our weaknesses so that we can strategize that. And as a previous personal trainer back in Vancouver, I'd like to see a more active community. I'd like to see a healthier lifestyle, happy community. I guess in terms of inclusivity, I'd like to thank everyone for having us more involved with the multicultural community, especially with the Bow Valley Settlement Services. They've been running so many programs to get us more involved with active activities like this, or with activities like this. Excuse for my ESL here. I speak English as my second language. I'm stuttering here, but yes. Thank you for this beautiful, healthy town and having so many athletes around us, and more blessings for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jin. Next up, Vijay Domingo.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Matt, for moderating tonight. And thank you to all those that have tuned in. I actually want to recognize that those of you that are watching today are avid bikers, but I also know that you're integrated into many other areas of this community. And I appreciate you taking the time this evening. And on that note, because I have the time, I wanted to give a shout out specifically to Marcus Henry at Steed Enduro. He did a program, Chilled the Shred, here during COVID and helped raise funds for Hope for Hospitality. And you do many good things outside of the biking world. And I just want to recognize you and those that participated in that program. I'm sure you're listening in tonight. A little shout out. I visited the seniors at Origin this week, and my one message that I had to pass on to you is they would really love to see mandatory bells and maybe a bit of on the left as you motor through some of those areas and share those spaces in the trails. Kindness. We need to look at the culture of kindness in our biking, and they are good people and definitely love the youth. So lastly, a little secret about me is you may not know, but I have a group of friends that take me biking all the time, but they take me biking internationally. So I've biked in Jordan from the Dead Sea to the Red Sea, biked in Tibet, Peru, and most recently Thailand. And there's nothing more exhilarating to learn the culture and learn the people and feel the land and on a bike. And I thank my friends for keeping me, pushing me, and it's because of that. And ironically, I have not done a lot of biking in my own backyard, and I'm maybe looking forward to getting and to learn more about these organizations and participating more, but I'm open to that. I have lots to learn, but at the same time, hopefully I bring a little bit of experience and some interest in learning more about my own backyard. So thanks very much, and appreciate having the opportunity tonight. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Vijay. Next, Tanya Faber.
It's so exciting when it's me. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Tanya Faubert. I am running for town council. Growing up here in Canmore when I was 8 years old, my grandma Elsie, who lived across the street from the Union Hall in a house that actually came from Bankhead, we went to a little auction, and there was this blue and yellow BMX bike, and I had my eye on it. It was mine, and we got it, and I spent the next several years of my life biking around this town with my grandma, and I made it a point to try and get anywhere I could go without ever having to take a road. Since then, Canmore has tripled in population and size, and we've seen our trail network only grow in terms of the amenities that it offers, and it's quite popular. We know this citizen satisfaction survey. And so if elected, I'm committed to continuing council's work, investing in active transportation, and looking at trail-based recreation in terms of economic development and tourism in our community. There are rewards from investing in both of these areas, from climate change, adaptation and mitigation, to increased quality of life, to increased tourism spending, and better amenities for those of us who live, work, and play here. I know the potential for the investing in these things that it will create a better future for us all. And in particular, I think that, we have so much potential for the future when it comes to this type of innovation. And innovation like this takes courage and patience. So, we're all in this together, and we have really great partners in the community with organizations like the ones putting on this forum this evening. Once again, Tanya Faubert, and don't forget to vote October 18th.
Thanks, Tanya. I'm really glad I didn't Saskatchewan your last name as well and call you Fubert like I might be prone to. Next up, Wade Graham.
I want to thank all the organizers tonight. I know these events are not easy in the middle of COVID, and I appreciate all the effort that everyone's put into tonight, and well done. Thank you very much. I love this place. I always have, I always will. I love its people and its wildlife. After almost 20 years, I still look up at the mountains with a sense of wonder and humility. And this election is a critical juncture for Canmore. We have many challenges and quite a few opportunities. I want to be at the table helping shape the future of our community. I want to help preserve what we've always and will always make this place unique and special. We've had a lot of growing pains over the years, and it's time to take a step back and make sure we're going in that direction. I find my personal solace in nature. Climbing and skiing brought me to the valley. The people kept me here. An active lifestyle is important to me and many folks in the valley. I recognize the importance that many of us put on our outdoors pursuits and our healthy lifestyles. Canmore is a world-class destination. Let's be leaders in every sense of that word. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Wade. Next up is Jeff Hillstad.
Thank you, Matt, for being such a great host tonight. And thank you, CAMBA, Canmore Trail Culture, and Canmore Community Cruisers, and all those in the background just doing excellent work to make this Zoom session as smooth as possible. And also, like, you know, there's been a good partnership between a lot of these organizations in the town, and I hope to see that continue in the future. I don't use the trails nearly as much as I would like, but my kids are starting to bike. They're starting to get big enough to go out there, so I expect that I'll be using them a lot more heavily in the near future. I really want to, I want to learn from these organizations. I hope that you guys can reach out and talk to all the candidates and get to know us all better. I want to know you guys better. I want to know what really drives you and where we can see improvements. I know I'm not the expert on it, but a lot of you are. So feel free to reach out. You can call me 403-678-7734. Again, just thank you guys so much for putting this on tonight and just coming out and participating and watching. And I know it's being recorded, so those in the future, thanks for watching too. I've really enjoyed serving on council the last 4 years, and I would be honored again to get your vote on October 18th or tomorrow if you want to do the advance vote. Last day is tomorrow. And again, just I really just so thankful for our community. We're so blessed with so many great organizations, and you all do such fantastic work, and it makes our town a much better place. And as I said, I really hope those partnerships can grow stronger and we can continue to work well into the future. And thanks for having us tonight.
Right on. Thanks, Jeff. Next up is Joanna McCallum. Joanna.
Thank you. So my name is Joanna McCallum. I'm running for re-election to Canmore Council. So growing up, I actually lived in Hamilton, of all beautiful places, and I lived inner city. And the way to get around quickly at that time was on my 10-speed on a one-way 5-lane road heading into the city center, everyone going 60 kilometers an hour, which you can imagine is not an awesome experience. So it has been wonderful to watch how our community has changed and shifted. And it's slow, and I admit that, to accommodating more of that driver like myself who's trying to get from A to B. And so I'm really excited to investigate alternate opportunities for a community that will bring more active transportation to us. Expanding transit is one way, but we also know that every bus or even car ride begins with a walk, whether it's to your car or to the bus or even to get on your bike. So making sure that we have good pedestrian facilities within our community is very important to me. I've had the opportunity to give my kids some freedom in this town on their bike. And I'm really proud of their bike etiquette. I've actually received compliments on it. But what's interesting is that they've learned to get around Canmore by snaking their way through on alleys as well as on pathways. And I really look forward to the day when they have their own separate facilities throughout town so that they can safely get from A to B and choose a bicycle as their main form of transportation should they want to, and choose to take transit as their main form of transportation if they want to. That is something, a future Canmore that I look forward to, and I think would really provide equality and affordability to individuals and families throughout, as well as just like yay bikes, like the glee of getting on my orange townie and getting around town. It gives me a lot of joy. In terms of mountain biking, I would break something if you caught me mountain biking, mostly my body, but I understand the challenges out there. And I do recollect a delegation to council. I want to say not in this term, in the term prior, perhaps, with regards to some of the flow trails that CAMBA has tried to implement throughout town. I know that there's one that was just installed along Bow Valley Trail that's seeing quite success. And I look forward to little opportunities like that where we can let kids be kids and they can get around and use the built form to have a bit of fun. So I am not a mountain biking or trail expert. I ride my townie, but I hope to see better infrastructure in our community, and I'm very much willing to work towards that. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Next on the random list is Karen Mara. Karen?
Thank you. And thank you. First, I'd like to thank everyone who was involved in tonight and in organizing this forum. I'm Karen Mara, and I'm running for town council for re-election. I have been in Canmore for 45 years plus. I have been in Canmore since the only mode, when you were a teenager, of transportation was to use your 2 feet or your used 10 speed. If you wanted to go up to what is now Craig's, what used to be the Texaco, for a coffee with your friends, you either rode your bike, and some of your friends didn't have bikes, so it was half walk, half bike. So we've come so far, so far. And for a while there, I have not been a biker. I've been using my vehicle or walking. And I am in the mode shift. I've just experienced an e-bike, and my very first ride was to Banff and back. So I thought that was a big milestone for someone like me who doesn't use bikes on a regular basis, but having that trail was an awesome opportunity for me to do that. So we had a lot of questions that were asked and answered tonight. We're coming down to the last few days of our election, and final voting day will be Monday, October 18th. And what we learned tonight is what a takeaway for me is collaboration with all the stakeholders moving forward in any initiative. So if you have any further questions for me, I'm available. I will put my phone number and email in the chat, and I ask for your support. And I hope to represent you and to listen to your concerns over any ideas or suggestions over the next 4 years to keep your community the best it can be. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Next is Rob Seeley.
Hi, I'm Rob Seeley, and I am running for re-election to Canmore Town Council. I enjoy riding and purchased a new bike locally this year. We live in one of the best places in the world, and our visitors remind us of that. Adventurous, adding to a fun, dynamic community. We need to be leaders in initiatives that strengthen Canmore's commitment to environmental stewardship and coexistence. Multimodal transportation, the integrated transportation master plan, purpose-built trails, and biking infrastructure are important initiatives I support. Thank you to CAMBA, the Canmore Community Cruisers, and Canmore Trail Culture for hosting tonight's event. I love to ride and recreate in our beautiful valley, and I'm looking forward to improvements in infrastructure on this great landscape. Thanks again.
Thank you, Rob. Next is Sean Krausert. Sean?
Thank you very much. And I want to thank Canmore Trail Culture and CAMBA and Community Cruisers, not only for hosting this forum, but also for your contributions to the transportation modality shift. Trail culture gets people out walking. Community Cruisers gets people set up on bikes, and CAMBA, you provide opportunities outside of the wildlife corridors that people can channel that energy. And as has been mentioned, there's been some great collaboration done with these groups, and I would like to see that continue. I also want to just mention that I really appreciate how the values of your organizations aren't just about outdoor rec and aren't just about getting a bike. It's in the context of inclusivity, creativity, sustainability, and those are values I certainly share. A little bit about myself. I'm an experienced leader. I've been twice elected to council and involved on numerous boards and committees, including chair of Rome Transit for several years. Originally a lawyer, most of my career has been as executive director or chief operating officer or director of operation. But I've also been a leader on social justice issues such as suicide prevention, poverty, and mental health. I'm co-founder of the free weekly community dinner, Food and Friends, and co-founder of the temporary emergency shelter program that ran this past winter called the REST program. My platform is divided into 6 parts, and you can find it on my website at seankrauser.ca. It focuses on affordability, climate change and environment, COVID recovery and economic development, financial stability, development and planning, and community development. I posted my contact information on in the chat. Please feel free to reach out. I'm very accessible and willing to answer your questions. And on October 18th, please vote Sean Krausert for your mayor. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. And to wrap it up, Vi Sanford. Vi?
Thank you very much. And thanks, Matt, for hosting this evening. You did a great job. You kept everybody on time. My name is Vi Sanford, and I'm running to be the next mayor of Canmore. I'm hoping to have your vote on October 18th. I've been on Canmore Town Council for the past 9 years, and I have interacted many times with the organizers of tonight's forum. Canmore Community Cruisers, I've had some interaction with your programming, and of course, CAMBA has partnered with the town of Canmore to do some trail work around the community. Canmore trail culture, I'm not that familiar with, but I sure would like to get to know you better. So thank you for getting together and organizing this forum tonight. And thank you mostly for encouraging and nurturing multimodal transportation and the joy of biking in our community. Mobility is an important aspect of building social connection and a sense of community. Main Street is open to bikes and pedestrians in summer, thus using mode shift to create a connected, vibrant town center. More adults and seniors are riding bikes and e-bikes as we build safer pathways and protected bike lanes. The town of Canmore collaborated with schools on traffic safety to encourage students to ride their bikes and stretch their limbs while reducing traffic congestion. Spring Creek Mountain Village adopted the first complete streets connection to Main Street, and hotel guests and residents can now easily enjoy a scenic walk or bike to downtown. Hotel guests along Bow Valley Trail can enjoy walking and safely crossing at Railway Avenue with no traffic turning across protected pedestrian and bike lanes. With fare-free Rome Transit, we can achieve our climate action goals by 2030. With mode shift, we all benefit from social connection, affordability, and well-being. And I congratulate all of you for your participation in that and bringing us forward that way. Please visit my website at votevi.ca and vote Vi for mayor on October 18th. Vi Sanford. Thank you.
Okay, that is the forum. So first of all, I should have apologized ahead of time. I hope the shine on my head didn't blind anybody as you were answering. Big thanks go out to everyone for being here today, all of our candidates, all of our public for joining and taking in the forum. I should also recognize that this forum was originally meant to be moderated by Ryan Kelly, the Lone Ranger, a YouTube personality and mountain biker. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to join us, but I did want to send out a thanks to him for having been willing. Please, everybody, vote on October 18th. That's just a short turn around the corner here. And thank you to all our partners for helping us to host this event, including ourselves, CAMBA, the Community Cruisers, of course, and Canmore Trail Culture. A link to the recap will be sent out via all partner social media channels. And I would hope that in the future, as everyone here has talked very adoringly about biking, as they should, that we could all at some point get out for a ride with somebody here from CAMBA. It'd be great to have met you all in person. This is a great second to have this Zoom, but yeah, hopefully we can all experience together what a great set of trails we have and how important it is to continue to build them out. So we'll see you all on the trails. Take care. Have a good night. Thank you.
Night, everyone.